Ooh, almost knocked down my drink.
I've spent a
Right, let's watch this one. I'm just gonna be watching shit. I'm not even gonna be playing games. Oh shoot, I forgot. One piece is the same. There you go, my little dude. There you go.
a lot of time trying to optimize the 100% speedrun for the GameCube version of Twilight Princess. Just in the past few months, I decided to learn the 100% speedruns for the Wii and HD versions of the game, which I previously had barely touched. Despite struggling a lot with the controls, it's been fun learning about the routing and strat differences stemming from version differences, and even contributing to routing and glitch hunting myself. Along the way, a lot of people have asked me what the differences are between these 300% speedruns. This video will answer that question in far more detail than I was able to during streams, going through the run piece by piece to highlight the differences and show off some cool version-specific tricks. For all this to make sense, you'll need to have a little bit of background knowledge on how 100% routes are structured for this game. The dungeons are all completed, of course, and while there's no category rule restricting dungeon order, the current 100% routes for all versions complete the dungeons in the intended order. For a few dungeons, there's no known way around this. For instance, we can't get to Temple of Time until we've beaten Snowpeak Ruins, because entering Temple of Time requires the Sacred Grove to be loaded on a certain layer, which we have no way to manipulate at present outside of beating Snowpeak. In other cases, altering dungeon order is possible, but would lock us out of something in the definition of 100%. An example is beating Snowpeak Ruins before Arbiter's Grounds, as is done in GameCube All Dungeons. With the trick known as Early Snowpeak, there's no barrier to doing this, but 100% requires getting the Coral Earring upgrade to the fishing rod from Rallis, which is done by giving him the sketch.
I don't think I've ever 100% of Twilight Princess now that I think. Hey, how's it going, Blank Check? So I don't even know anything about the damn upgrades and stuff. The only thing that I did by myself was Mellow Mart.
Acquired from Ashe, who only spawns in Snowpeak once the Mirror of Twilight is raised at the exit to Arbiter's Grounds. And naturally, both Ashe and Rallis disappear once Snowpeak Ruins is completed. Ultimately, with current knowledge, the only dungeons that we can really move around in a 100% run are Forest Temple and Goron Mines. And although some older routes and route ideas that we've had over the years...
Oh, really? Congratulations. How was it? How does it end, actually? Is like an excellent canon ending, or is it just setting up another game like 1, 2, and 3 did? It's good. That's good.
Do move these dungeons around. The current routes complete Forest Temple first and Goron Mines second, as intended.
That's cool.
I'd love to get into why this is and why a route for each console could potentially benefit from moving them, but I can go on for a while about this kind of thing and it's not entirely on topic, so I'll save that for another time. Clearing the 3 Twilights in Faerun, Elden, and Moneru is not explicit in the definition of...
Even though I don't think they're ever going to make another sequel to Halo Infinite. Or are they? Infinite sequel. Halo Infinite 2 was in development before being canceled. It's good. Yeah, there won't be. RIP. Even though I heard good things from it. Oh, wait. Yeah, Halo Infinite is a new one that came out. No, it's not. With the multiplayer and stuff. But then because it didn't add content, people got bored of it.
100%, but it is always necessary with current knowledge because certain NPCs and the rewards only become available post-Twilight. However, the Twilights are not always...
My bad, most of the stuff around. Twilights, clear Faerun Wood for Coral's Bottle, Purple Mist Pile. The Elden Twilight from Nalaru Twilight, Barnes Bombay, Hawkeye. I got that. I don't know who the fuck that is. Bridge of Elden Portal, yup. Golden Bugs, maybe. Yeah. Powered Dominion Rod. I have no idea what the hell that is. Oh. Another bomb bag upgrade, plums. I have no idea what the hell that is. But I've probably done some of them. The Sky Cannon for sure. And beating the game.
Always done at the times one might expect.
Saddest game I ever finished is Red Dead 2. I heard that you can get tuberculosis in that game, which is kind of wild.
The third and final structural component in 100% Run is the overworld collection.
Let's see if I can find a video of it.
It's bad for you.
Just minding my own business, I promise.
There's this one. No, it's not that one.
Uncle.
Hello.
This is the one I was talking about. Why is it depressing as shit? Well, that's a great anti-smoking. How do you? Anyways, I want to serve anti-smoking commercial. True.
Occurs between the dungeons, which is often defined by time of day constraints in what we call day-night cycles. Certain events take place at certain in-game times, and many pose are only available at night. But unlike most Zelda games, there's no simple way to skip to certain times of day in Twilight Princess. We will see, however, that there are ways. The sections where time of day informs the route more than anything else will be the post-Midna's Desperate Hour cycle between Lakebed and Arbor's Grounds, the post-Temple of Time cycle leading up to City in the Sky, and the post-Cave of Ordeals cycle for the final nighttime cleanup. With this background info, you now know pretty much everything that the three routes we're examining have in common. This will make it possible to see how different they really are. Let's get started.
I have no. What the fuck?
Unlike most other glitch in Arbor's Grounds, the post-Temple of Time common. This will make
What the hell is this?
it possible to see how different they really are.
Did I beat Twilight Princess, dog?
Let's get started.
Cause I don't remember this scene. Damn.
Unlike most other glitched categories that skip the bulk of Orden Village by saving as title screen link via the back in time glitch, 100% must complete Orden Village, as its definition includes the fishing rod, slingshot, milk bottle, and Orden warp portal. Despite the different versions all having the same goals in this introductory sequence, we'll already see some divergences for HD. First off, there is a free blue rupee on the way to the fishing rod, which makes RNG rupees irrelevant for reaching the 30 rupees required to buy the slingshot. And HD occasionally cuts some content. In this version, you only need to catch one fish for the cat instead of two. The much lauded quick climbing also saves some time for HD here on the ladders and vines.
Seen someone triggering their grandma to think Cyberpunk was 2077 was a new city. Being made by Aiden Ross. Damn. Damn. That's kind of mean, but that's fucking hilarious. See if I can find it. grandman instead of grandma. Damn. I can't find it. Then again, I didn't really try. Too hard for that.
All this gets HD to the slingshot about 30 seconds faster than GameCube and Wii can. The next goal is to get the lantern from Koro and Farron, but there's a gate in the way. If you've ever seen a Twilight Princess speedrun before, you know that gates in this game are generally not very effective, but this gate in particular studied hard in gate school between 2006 and 2016, and cannot be clipped through without Epona on HD. Epona is not mountable at this point, so while GameCube and Wii head right through the gate to Koro, HD Hundo must get the wooden sword as intended, which also means completing the slingshot and sword tutorials, as well as watching an extra cutscene on the way to the sewers later, which all ends up costing about a minute and a half. The reason, by the way, that skipping the wooden sword is even an option is that the Hundo definition only requires that all the equipment slots on the pause screen are filled in the end. Since the Orden sword uses the same slot as the wooden sword and overwrites it, the wooden sword is not required. Likewise, since a wooden shield uses the same slot as the Orden shield, either works for Hundo, but since there's no known way to get the Orden portal without the Orden sword and shield, they are always the best choice. Everything else up to entering Farron is the same in all three versions' routes, with the exception of SD needing to kill the bokoblins at Talos' cage with the slingshot for lack of a wooden sword. We might expect then that GameCube and Wii would enter Farron something like a minute ahead of HD. My sum of best segments up to entering Farron on GameCube is 20 minutes and 31 seconds, and on HD it's 20 minutes and 51 seconds. And that's with far fewer runs to optimize the time.
Damn.
What gives? Another factor contributing to time differences here and everywhere
load
is the
screens?
difference in load times between versions, with GameCube having the slowest loads and HD having the fastest, and Wii load speed being in the middle but closer to HD. This is why a top Wii runner's sum of best up to entering Farron is 19 minutes and 58 seconds, over half a minute faster than GameCube despite the routes and strategies being identical up to this point. Loads across 100% haven't been thoroughly timed, but I did thoroughly time loads across glitchless any percent, which is almost Hundo length, where playing on Wii saves 3 minutes and 49 seconds on loads alone over the entire run versus playing on GameCube. Some HD loads save over a second over GameCube, and one single warp can be 3 seconds faster. Input buffering is the other way that HD makes up some time in the beginning of the run. In all but one instance of Midna having dialogue and then letting Link jump a long distance, there is one frame on which an A input will make Link jump before Midna's flying animation rather than after it. On SD versions, runners will either mash or time A inputs for these one frame.
I'd say. They also did it with GTA by saying that this was the news and that the car drove into pedestrians being chased by police. I think I saw that one. There's this one though.
Look what we saw on the news today. This crazy car accident. They were driving so fast.
Wow.
They're going the opposite way.
Yes.
Oh! Whoa! Is he okay? Is he okay? Wait, another one? Wait.
Wait, there's another one.
Another one?
Not a
This
good
same, this street's insane in California. Oh!
Damn.
Framers, but consistency in actually getting them is understandably not very high. But on HD, most cutscenes and animations buffer most inputs, meaning that held inputs are read by the game as occurring on the first possible frame after a cutscene or animation. This means that one-framers are all easy to get on HD. Simply hold the buttons. No mashing or timing necessary. So all three versions
It's in the cinematic view? Alright, so.
On the parkway.
With that one?
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh. Oh. On the parkway.
In West Valley.
Yeah, this happened in West Valley.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
sorry.
Enter Farron having completed the same objectives. And
No, because the wild thing is that even though we see pixels and stuff, like, so older generations, it looks fucking like real life. It's kind of crazy. Because you got to remember that games used to just look like they used to look like that. That used to be their game. They thought that this was advanced as shit. And then they thought that that looked like real life, or see if I can look on. This is a better image. Like legit. Oh, fuck, I don't think you guys can see that. But when I was a kid, I grew up playing this game, dog. Day of Reckoning. These characters look insane, dog. Like to me, this is pretty much like real life to me, dude. And I look at it and they're like, yeah, it looks kind of bad. But like this looked like I was like these pictures, dude. God, Day of Reckoning 2 was such a good game. Let's see. Let's see the Cyberpunk if I can find it. Ross building city. No. Yeah, no, I can't find it. Hmm. Yeah, no, I can't find it. It's the same grandma. Yeah.
and HD's wooden sword has already been replaced by the Orden sword. But Farron holds some more changes for HD. Whereas each Twilight contains 16 tiers of light on SD, 4 tiers were removed from each Twilight on HD. On top of that, HD can collect the tiers far sooner after killing the bugs than SD can, resulting in a much quicker Twilight. In Farron Twilight specifically, 3 out of the 4 bugs that were removed are right next to other bugs that were not removed, meaning the pathing is largely unchanged from SD, but the bugs removed from the other 2 Twilights will have a greater impact. The next difference is a big one, and pretty well known as well. It'll have repercussions throughout the remainder of early game and even far later in the route. While both SD versions use the familiar super jump in North Farron to get to the Sacred Grove and the Master Sword early, HD cannot, as there is a big invisible wall there. As an aside, I actually should mention here that early Master Sword or EMS is in fact possible on HD, but only if you stretch the meaning of the word early a little bit, as the trick takes many hours to perform. Yes, the infamous pickup slide. This makes EMS irrelevant to almost all HD speedruns.
The fuck happened
If you're
there?
interested, you can check the video description for links to videos showing how this is done. Anyway, I could talk through all the effects of getting the Master Sword early here and now, but I think it'll be easier to understand if I just note them as they come up in the route. Incidentally, the history of EMS in 100% is actually a pretty interesting one, because it poses some challenges for routing, but that's outside the scope of this video. Going purely sequentially, the first effect of EMS is actually detrimental, as the SD routes must warp back to South Farron and backtrack to North Farron because they couldn't get the North Farron portal while also getting to the Grove early. But after backtracking and finishing the Twilight, the routes with the Master Sword can still transform and warp straight back to North Farron. HD, on the other hand, needs to hoof it. This means getting the key from Koro, opening the gate, rolling through the tunnel, and then being escorted across the purple mist by the monkey, which is, as we say in the business, slow. The forest.
Alright, shoot. Let me check your points for you real quick. You on YouTube? Remember loyalty. You have 413 points. Guess for some reason it doesn't want to work. I just have to manually tell you.
Temple is where we finally see the two SD routes begin to diverge, and there's a lot to discuss. The GameCube route completely breaks the dungeon. I mentioned earlier that Back in Time cannot be used in 100% to skip Orden, but another application of Back in Time can be used to get to Ook and the Gale Boomerang early. I won't get into the technical details, but loading a file with certain properties in a certain way during Back in Time loads Link into the King Bulblin 1 fight, which sets a value in memory called the boss flag that doesn't get reset properly when reloading the file in Forest Temple. The value of the boss flag, among other things, keeps track of how many monkeys have been rescued in Forest Temple. Thus, when Link opens the door to the missing bridge to Ook, he is greeted by 3 free monkeys that he has never seen before. After getting the boomerang, GameCube makes a quick pass through the dungeon's west wing for the heart pieces, then the east wing for the boss key, then heads straight to Diababa, making use of the iconic Boomerang Long Jump Attack, or LJA, to traverse the gap without rescuing any more monkeys. The Wii route through Forest Temple could hardly be more different. It all comes down to the Boomerang LJA not being possible on the Wii version, and without yet having another means of getting to the boss door, we must rescue all 8 monkeys to make the chain. Unfortunately, while the boss flag glitch GameCube uses also works on Wii for getting to Ook, the glitch actually breaks the dungeon's flag system in such a way that it becomes impossible for the final monkey chain ever to form, meaning that even the first 4 monkeys must be rescued. All of this makes Wii Hundo's Forest Temple about 8 minutes slower than GameCube's. Something I'd like for everyone to take away from this video is that needing to do extra things does not necessarily make a speedrun bad. Anything that isn't a true auto-scroller can be optimized. The Wii version gets a bad rap for not being able to do boomerang LJAs, and yes, it does make the run longer. But there are several cool strategies for rescuing monkeys quickly that contribute to making the speedrun fun and unique among Hundo categories. For starters, Wii actually goes to Ook with only 2 monkeys by clipping into the bridges in the west wing. The boomerang is used to get a heart piece in the 3rd monkey's room, so getting the boomerang early means combining the heart piece and the monkey into one trip to the room instead of 2 separate ones. The 7th monkey can be saved without dropping below the floor, instead using some precise boomerang targets to make the bombling blow up the cage. And a tile worm boost and pop-up saves
Yeah,
more
it's got
time in
boom,
the 8th monkey's
bloom.
room compared to running through the tunnel.
We're just chilling watching speedruns of Majora's Mask, or the differences between all of them.
HD, but Back in Time does not.
It's kind of
The
wild
fastest option is to do the same bridge clips that we do.
because where some of them take a little bit to set up future stuff. Some of them do it faster, but then they have to do other things that adds more time. So their times are like almost the same, but not quite.
To get to Ook with only
It's
2
wild.
monkeys, then complete the rest of the dungeon like GameCube does, LJAing to Diababa. But there is one more difference. Forest Temple contains the first Miiverse stamps of the run.
Dude, you
These collectibles are unique.
What's up? Anton Blast. Let's see, that's 2 weeks ago on Steam.
I'm gonna find out who did this and blast him into teeny, tiny little pieces!
No, gosh, blessed Anton, what the hell are you doing here?
I demand that you find this Antoine!
Lately, there's been a satanic aura all over my different businesses, Anton. As long as you make good on clearing out those satanic pests, I'll lift the ban.
I mean, it kind of looks like what Sonic wanted to be. And Tom Blast is a new Wario Land. I'll check it out.
To the HD version and are included in the 100% definition. They're almost exclusively found in chests that exist on GameCube and Wii, but contain things of little importance, like rupees. But a few chests were added to the game specifically to contain stamps. Each dungeon contains 2 stamps, with the exception of City in the Sky, which is apparently so important to the Miiverse postal system as to warrant containing 3 stamps. Most stamps, the Forest Temple pair included, don't cost very much time to get because they're basically on the way to other destinations. But there are a few stamps that I'll mention later that do require huge detours. Thankfully, the Ooklis Diababa fight is possible and equally slick on all 3 versions. It's kind of surprising how much there is to talk about between finishing the Forest Temple and even beginning Elden Twilight. In casual play, you'd roll across Hyrule Field, talk to the postman, get the Gorge portal, warp the bridge back to the Gorge, and then head to Kakariko. The GameCube route adds the least to this, replacing the rolling with dashing as a wolf, which is possible with the Master Sword, and skipping the postman with an LJA. Wii changes a couple of things. First, the postman skip is done with wolf jump attacks, which are faster than transforming twice to LJA. This is one of the reasons that Wii Hundo is run on the NTSC 1.0 revision. As the very first version of the game created, it's got some differences from later revisions. Postman triggers are rings, but the rings are so thin on 1.0 that Wolf Link can simply jump attack into and back out of them. The second route change is getting one golden bug that's kind of on the way to Elden. Golden bugs are traded to Agatha for rupees, and the Wii route needs to be more front-loaded with rupees than the GameCube route because it will have fewer trips to Castletown, where many of the rupees need to be spent. I'll talk more later on about why this is. HD has a slightly larger change here. Instead of warping the bridge to the Gorge right away, we head across Hyrule Field and clip through the gate to Lanayru, then open up Lanayru by getting the Zora's Domain warp portal. This means that later, when we enter Lanayru to complete the Twilight, we can skip several minutes of dashing across Hyrule Field to the Great Bridge of Hylia, and instead warp the Death Mountain Rock to the already opened Zora's Domain portal. Since HD doesn't have the Master Sword and opening Lanayru is only possible as Wolf, this Wolf section is the only opportunity to do it. Elden Twilight itself is more similar across versions. GameCube and Wii have no route differences here. The only strat difference is that Bomb House skip, which saves about 30 seconds over burning down the Bomb House, can only be done with the Wolf method on Wii. The Wolf method is also optimal on GameCube, but some runners opt to transform and use an LJA instead, just because this is easier. HD is the odd one out again. Wolf Bomb House skip is still possible, but because the jump angle is precise and Wii U controllers don't have notches, the trick is considerably more difficult than on SD. Without the Master Sword, HD also can't do the well clip in the graveyard that SD does, and must instead light the torches in the sanctuary to get to the basement bugs. However, the 4 bugs that HD removes from Elden Twilight are pretty inconvenient ones, so HD's Elden Twilight ends up being over a minute faster than SD's. This section is a doozy. It's hard to even give it a title because of how different the routes are. This is by far the most divergent section. After finishing Elden Twilight, HD takes around 15 minutes to get to Goron Mines, while GameCube takes around 30 and Wii takes nearly an hour. I think the best approach will be to give an overview of the order in which each route tackles elements of this section, then highlight the version's specific strategies used in each element. Let's start with HD's route because it's most similar to the intended route. After completing Elden Twilight, HD tames Epona, rides to Orden for the Iron Boots and collects some golden bugs along the way, rides back to Kakariko to fight King Bulblin 1, climbs Death Mountain, wrestles Gorkoron, beats Goron Mines, buys the bomb bag from Barnes, blows up the Lanayru rocks to enter the Twilight, warps the Death Mountain rock to the previously opened Zora's Domain portal, clears the Twilight, escorts Telma's wagon to Kakariko for the Zora armor, and finally enters Lakebed Temple to complete it. There are 3 things I want to discuss here so far. The first regards bombs and the Lanayru rocks. It is only possible to buy the bomb bag from Barnes after clearing the Twilight, beating Goron Mines, and beating King Bulblin 1. Furthermore, Barnes will no longer sell his bomb bag if there is any other permanent bomb bag in the inventory, and the Lanayru rocks can be blown up at any time, but blowing them up will only spawn the Bridge of Elden warp portal, which is included in the 100% definition, if done prior to beating Lakebed Temple. Remember this when we get to the SD routes. Second is a neat trick that we won't see on SD. HD's overworld travel at this point is still pretty slow on account of not being able to warp outside of Twilights without the Master Sword. After getting the Zora armor, the fastest way to get to Lakebed Temple without warping is via the shortcut in the Kakariko Graveyard, which is behind an underwater rock. But instead of rolling to Barnes, buying water bombs, and rolling back, we can pull a normal bomb frame perfectly while side hopping into the water to keep the fuse lit, then push it towards the rock to open the shortcut.
That's
Third
cool.
is a note about Goron Mines. Like Forest Temple, it contains 2 stamps, but one of them is in this chest, which cannot be accessed without the claw shot, which HD cannot get early for reasons I'll explain shortly. This means that HD Hundo must make an entire second trip to Goron Mines later in the run just for this chest. This is a big stamp-induced detour, but just like Wii's Forest Temple, it has a silver lining in the form of 2 fun and entirely unique strategies we get to use on that second trip, so stay tuned for that. In comparison, the SD routes will have 2 major differences, both enabled by having the Master Sword early.
Hold up, what are the stamps for? I've never even seen them or gotten them. Twilight Princess. In the original, I've been watching videos like Princess HD, and I can show those stamps in it. And like having to backtrack the closer. What each stamp replaces. Miiverse stamp locations. Introduce, you can level to 50 of them, and 100 job posts on the Miiverse. The original game. In the original game for the GameCube with me, there used to be an overabundance treasure of rupees, and the Miiverse stands basically animal for ID awards. Okay. So they're just for Miiverse stuff. Alright, cool. So it's just for HD and stuff. I thought it was missing like extra content.
From Lakebed Temple prior to entering Goron Mines. The claw shot is useful inside Goron Mines in the Crystal Switch Room and for skipping the final magnet. And an early claw shot can also be used to get the Lake Hylia Shrine Heart Piece and Elden Cliff Heart Piece at convenient times without backtracking. Second, they'll use a glitch called text displacement to enter Goron Mines. Having the Master Sword breaks the cutscene with Gorkoron and makes it impossible to wrestle him to enter the dungeon. But with text displacement, we can basically store how far we are into a dialogue with a different NPC, then apply that to Gorkoron to get right to his text boxes that open the dungeon. These 2 major differences take different forms on GameCube and Wii. Let's take a look at GameCube first. After Elden Twilight, GameCube also tames Epona, but does so as Wolf, which saves a few seconds overall and looks a little different. We then go to Orden for the Iron Boots or Warp rather than riding Epona, saving something like 45 seconds. Transforming and warping was of course impossible on HD for lack of the Master Sword. This is also why GameCube gets the goat-herding heart piece on this trip, completely clearing Orden, while HD does not. Grottos can only be entered as Wolf, and the Orden Ranch Grotto contains a stamp on HD, so HD will need to visit the ranch again sometime after getting the Master Sword anyway, and it makes sense to combine goat herding and the stamp into one trip. At this point, GameCube does not return to Kakariko like HD did. Instead, we warp to Farron and ride Epona to the Lanayru Gate to then clip through and open Lanayru's Zora's Domain portal just as HD did prior to Elden Twilight, though riding Epona to the gate is faster than dashing as Wolf, and gives GameCube the opportunity to get a Golden Bug and Heart Piece in Hyrule Field along the way. The process of opening Lanayru isn't quite the same either. We enter Lanayru in the middle of Lake Hylia, basically right above the entrance to Lakebed Temple, and before warping the Death Mountain Rock to Zora's Domain, the water level in Lake Hylia is low enough that, armed with the Master Sword to transform into human in Twilight and the Iron Boots to sink, we can sink down near the entrance to Lakebed, use a pillar to clip through the wall, and barely make it to the dungeon entrance before running out of air. HD actually does pillar clip as well when it enters Lakebed Temple, but it uses the Zora armor. Zora armor pillar clip is far less risky on account of the infinite air, but it is quite slippery. We'll see soon that no two versions enter Lakebed in quite the same way. After pillar clip, GameCube is faced with a long tunnel full of water in which Link will surely drown. What poor planning. But conveniently, although Link's initial save warp spawn point in Lakebed is the tunnel entrance, the spawn point is altered to be on land when Link has the Master Sword. There's only one more obstacle standing between us and an early claw shot: the rock at the entrance to Deku Toad's room. We don't have bombs or ball and chain to blow it up, and we don't have Zora armor to clip past it with the help of a pod. What we do have is a save file we made in the Sacred Grove on the way to the Master Sword. Howling at the stone to start the Skull Kid chase sets the boss flag just like the Back in Time trick in Forest Temple did, though the Grove save couldn't be used for monkeys because it doesn't set the boss flag to a high enough value. But the value it sets is enough to skip boss and mini-boss intro cutscenes, the other main function of the boss flag. This is very powerful when applied to Deku Toad, as the intro cutscene only plays when Link is on the floor, and then you can start the fight by looking at the ceiling. With the intro cutscene deactivated, we can enter through the exit and still look up at the ceiling to start the fight. Actually, pretty much everything done within Lakebed is unique to each version, so I'll come back to that after we've finished going through the route up to Morpheal. For now, suffice it to say that GameCube gets the claw shot and then leaves using the Lakebed Uku, which will make returning later fast and will be useful in another way soon. Ukuing out of Lakebed puts us right back in Lake Hylia, where we can continue to the Zora's Domain portal just like HD did, albeit with a transformation to speed up the Karkarock fight by a few seconds. GameCube then warps the Death Mountain Rock to the newly opened Zora's Domain portal and gets the Lanayru vessel, but then splits up Lanayru Twilight in a way that's unique among all categories of all versions of the game. Between getting the vessel and finishing the Twilight, we get the heart piece in the shrine, get text displacement with a frame-perfect Uku pull while buying the bottle of lantern oil from Koro, and also complete the entirety of Goron Mines. The rationale for this unintuitive routing just comes to where Uku leaves us after text displacement, but I'll go into more detail on that when I commentate my current GameCube Hundo PB, which is on this route. For now, back to the route overview. GameCube completes Goron Mines, finishes Lanayru Twilight, and then steals the Lent Bomb Bag from Iza before getting the Zora armor. This is something HD didn't have to do. Recall that the Lanayru rocks must be blown up before beating Lakebed Temple, and Barn's Bomb Bag must be the first permanent bomb bag. The GameCube route didn't have to ride Epona back to Kakariko after getting the Iron Boots, and so didn't naturally hit the King Bulblin 1 fight trigger, and defeating King Bulblin is part of what makes Barnes sell the bomb bag. Now, we could have gone back to do the fight anyway, but we actually intentionally delay the fight until later for reasons that I'll get to. So the only ways GameCube has to blow up the Lanayru rocks without getting locked out of Barnes' bomb bag are to get the ball and chain early, which was used in old routes but is slow in this one, or to steal a bomb bag from Iza that will disappear automatically at the next save prompt. Having the claw shot makes the wagon escort for Zora armor a bit different from HD because we can claw shot to this quick 100 rupee chest under the bridge. After getting the Zora armor, we blow up the Lanayru rocks and Uku back to Lakebed to get to Morpheal, finally meeting back up with the HD route. Roughly. In case your brain isn't full yet, let's now add the Wii route in. Fortunately, it's largely similar to the GameCube route for this section, just with a couple of things reordered. So why is the claw shot later?
My brain hurts.
Come to think of it, why bother stealing a bomb bag if we're going to fight King Bulblin and get the real bomb bag by the time we get to the Lanayru rocks? The two questions have the same answer. This stalactite. which is at the heart of routing for all Wii categories. See, because Wii can't LJA to Deku-Toad like GameCube and HD can, it follows the intended route through Lakebed more closely, getting the small key downstairs, taking it upstairs, and then dropping to Deku-Toad, culminating in a Moon Boots jump attack, which incidentally is not possible on GameCube, to skip getting the second key. While it is possible to get the first small key without knocking down the stalactite by boosting off the water jet, there is no known way past this gate without knocking the stalactite down with a bomb. Not even the ball and chain will do. So Wii Hundo steals a bomb bag just for this stalactite, though it does get a little more use since we already have it. All of that said, I should mention that there is an alternative bombless lakebed route on Wii. If you've seen the glitchless TAS I made earlier this year, you may remember the spectacular scene of two big pots pushing Link across a big gap straight to Deku-Toad. This alternative to LJAing across the gap works just fine on Wii, skipping the confounding stalactite. And in a TAS setting, it's even faster than LJAing. However, this trick is extraordinarily precise, costs a lot of time to fail, and when done by a human involves a lengthy setup. Pretty understandably, most people consider it not to be viable for full game runs, though one crazy person has done it in a run. If pot push ever became more reasonable to attempt, it would significantly change many Wii routes, including 100%. Alright, that was a pretty thorough route comparison, but there are still a few unique strats I haven't had a chance to highlight. Contrasting the pillar clips done to enter Lakebed on GameCube without Zora armor and on HD with Zora armor, the Wii version uses a 1.0 exclusive glitch called a Midna Dive to fall through the lake faster than we could swim. Linear Twilight, as usual, is missing 4 bugs on HD, speeding it up significantly. GameCube and Wii, in exiting Zora's domain underwater to avoid the Rutella cutscene, optimally side-hop off the lip of the waterfall to get to one of the bugs. Wii, being unable to LJA over the King Bulblin fight trigger at the end of the wagon escort, can instead open the gate from a specific spot where it can then dig and clip into the gate, then run around the trigger. Getting to Goron Mines, Wii makes use of 1.0's smaller NPC triggers again to get text displacement from Telma in the bar instead of Koro, simply by talking to Telma from outside the cutscene trigger so that her dialogue can be advanced one text box at a time instead of all at once. GameCube enters Goron Mines in a very special way. With a trick called Early Elevator, we clip out of bounds and LJA to the elevator shortcut into the Goron Elder Cave, which has not been opened yet.
They're trying to beat the dog shit out of them.
Escape the elevator with a frame-perfect roll after a transformation. This is around 15 seconds faster than ascending Death Mountain the normal way. Within Goron Mines, Wii can't LJA across the lava in the first room, and abuses invincibility frames to get through the third flame jet instead. But it makes up a lot of time in the magnetic ceiling room, because force unequipping the iron boots while being magnetically drawn to the ceiling lets the Wii version run across the ceiling without iron boots, while GameCube and HD have to clunk along at a snail's pace. GameCube and Wii save some time over HD in the crystal switch room by skipping the puzzle in favor of using their early claw shots to hit the switch from below. Wii then can't LJA to skip cutting this bridge down, but it can get across with a pot jump. This is simply jumping with a pot in Link's hands and dropping the pot at the right time to get it to push Link forwards a little bit, which is just enough to clear this gap.
That's cool.
Wii also can't LJA straight to Dangoro's door, but it can still skip the second Goron Elder with a very precise jump we call Key Shard Skip. Trust me, it is more precise than it looks. Finally, while GameCube and Wii can use their early claw shots to skip the final magnet on the way to Phyrus, HD can only skip it with this somewhat precise LJA, done after a convenient setup involving a Moon Boots jump attack, which still doesn't work on GameCube. The route overview ended up covering most of the strat differences in Lakebed, but this heart piece is meant to be the last accessible chest in the entire dungeon, and all 3 versions get it early. On the GameCube Lakebed route, it makes the most sense to get the heart piece before the claw shot, so we LJA over, put a pot on the switch, get the heart piece, and then clip out of bounds using the gate to respawn at a high point in the room. On HD, it makes more sense to get it after the claw shot, but we LJA over from the small key chest on the other side. We, of course, can't LJA to it, but we can instead drop onto this pillar and then barely cross the gap with a wolf dash. Lakebed is also home to one of the more out-of-the-way dungeon stamps in HD, all the way at the top of the East Water Tower. Congratulations, you made it to the end of this incredibly long section. Here's a trophy.
Damn, there's so
There's
much.
plenty left to talk about, but it gets a lot less complicated. How could there possibly be any route differences in Midna's Desperate Hour? You just bring the Midna back to the Midna store. Well, that's just what GameCube and HD do, but Wii has other plans. All 3 routes need to go through Castletown during MDH, and then do so again afterwards to learn a hidden skill from the Golden Wolf in the area south of Castletown, which is not present during MDH. On either one of these passes through Castletown, we can take care of some errands, donating rupees to Charlo to contribute to the 1,000 total needed for the heart piece, playing the first star minigame for the big quiver, and donating golden bugs to Agatha for a wallet upgrade and some rupees. These errands must be done as humans, so HD can only do them on the second pass, but GameCube and Wii can do them on either. It's very slightly faster to do them on the second pass to avoid transforming twice during MDH, but the Wii version does do them partially during MDH. As I mentioned earlier, the Wii version will be making fewer trips to Castletown than the GameCube version. This is basically because the final hidden skill, Great Spin, is so useful on GameCube that it's worth making an extra trip to Castletown just to learn it. But it's far less useful on Wii because the Wii version has a cooldown on quick spins that isn't present on the other versions. This means that the Wii route won't be able to get the largest 1,000 rupee wallet until the final Castletown trip, and to finish donating 1,000 rupees to Charlo on that same trip using only the 600 rupee wallet, we must have donated a lot of rupees earlier on in the run. So during the MDH pass, we'll give the golden bugs to Agatha to fill up the 600 rupee wallet, so that on the post-MDH pass, we can give those rupees to Charlo without having to go through 2 extra load zones. The only other difference is for HD, which can't conveniently transform to human and use the lantern to burn this web in the sewers like SD can. But this is the last time I'll have to say that. After MDH, HD can finally go get the Master Sword. The primary goal between MDH and Arbiter's Grounds in any Hondo route is to spend in-game time as efficiently as possible to reach night before heading to Aru and the desert. This is because there are many Poes along the way that are only available at night, and it would cost a lot of time to backtrack and get them later. There are a handful of ways to spend in-game time here. Plum's minigame and both of Isa's minigames are available, as is the fishing pond. There are some golden bugs to pick up in the areas outside Castletown. We can even take a trip to the Gorge to spend daytime getting heart pieces and golden bugs, though we'll have to come back later for some nocturnal Poes, so this isn't very efficient. Some routes even spend daytime by going to Snow Peak early just to open the warp portal, but this is also inefficient because of Poes. The HD and Wii routes do subsets of the things I just mentioned to spend the daytime. They do different amounts though, because Wii starts this cycle at 6 AM, the time set after MDH, and HD starts at 11 AM, the time set by the Master Sword cutscene, which of course the Wii version watched far earlier. These daytime spending tasks don't involve many version-specific strategies, but the Wii version does replace LJAing to the heart piece chest at the Gorge with a nifty wolf hop that really looks like it shouldn't work, but does. GameCube, on the other hand, doesn't so much spend in-game time as delete it. Remember how the GameCube route declined to fight King Bulblin earlier? This is where we finally fight him. Fighting him late, we have the benefit of using the bow to make the fight trivial, but finishing the fight also sets in-game time to 5 PM, just before night. This means that only a couple tasks need to be routed in here to make it to nighttime, so we use only the most important and efficient tasks, fishing and getting the bomb bag from Isa's first minigame, and save the others for other points in the run where they can be done most efficiently.
Motherfucker, just drop.
The strategy game, and most important, and only a couple tasks need to be routed in here to make it to nighttime. So we use only the most important and efficient tasks, fishing and getting the bomb bag from Isa's first minigame, and save the others for other points in the run where they can be done most efficiently. The strategy that makes this save enough time to be worth stealing the bomb bag earlier will come up a little while from now on the way to City in the Sky. Once each version reaches nighttime, the routing is largely the same up to Arbiter's Grounds, with the exception of a few stamps HD needs to pick up along the way. But there are 2 areas with interesting version-specific differences. The first is Isa 1 skip. Each route needs to get Isa's bomb bag by finishing her first minigame, but none of them actually does the whole minigame, because it's kind of slow. All you really need to do to finish the minigame is reach the load zone at the end of Zora's River on the proper area layer. On GameCube, we can do this about 20 seconds faster than canoeing down the river as intended. First, we shoot the rocks to start the minigame, then escape the minigame by save warping. Later, we warp to Lake Hylia, start Plum's minigame, which also takes place in Zora's River, and void out of bounds. You're not supposed to be able to void out in this minigame, and the respawn point if you do is this invisible platform at the end of the river. The map defaults to the Isa minigame layer because we started it earlier, so now we can just swim to the load zone for our bomb bag. The Wii version follows roughly the same process, but it's made a little bit faster by being able to talk to NPCs sooner after using an item. It turns out that talking to Isa between shooting a bomb arrow at the rocks and the bomb arrow reaching the rocks activates the minigame but skips the reload that puts Link in the canoe. meaning we can just leave instead of save warping. Talking to Isa so soon after shooting a bomb arrow is simply not possible on GameCube. HD has the wackiest method of skipping the minigame. On any version, it's possible to warp from right next to Isa by talking to her and opening the map on the same frame. But telling Isa that you'll help her also causes the game to pull up the item wheel automatically on SD, or pause automatically on HD, to show the bombs that she just put in the inventory. If you've started a warp, Link continues transforming and warping after this pause, so equipping a different tunic during this pause means that Link tries to put on the different tunic while kind of being a wolf. You can probably tell that this is never supposed to happen. The crazy thing is that Link's coordinates at this point are everywhere at once, and that includes the load zone at the end of the river. This means that HD can skip the minigame without blowing up the rocks, save warping, voiding in Plum's minigame, or swimming to the load zone, saving something like a minute and a half over the GameCube method. Unfortunately, this glitch is not well understood yet, and seemingly randomly Link sometimes warps away instead of hitting the load zone, despite no noticeable difference in inputs. Hopefully we'll figure out why that happens at some point so that Isa 1 skip becomes less of a reset point for HD Hundo. Anyway, the reason this glitch can't be used on SD is that for some reason Link's SD coordinates are only everywhere on the X and Z axes, but remain unchanged on the Y axis. And since the load zone at the end of the river is below where the trick is done, Link doesn't actually hit it. The other interesting strat difference is in the Bulblin camp, where all versions can skip running around the camp to get the small key. GameCube does this the fastest with a glitch called Map Glitch that disables typical load zones and void planes, but conveniently gets turned back off by the transition to Arbiter's Grounds on the boar. We LJA to this cliff out of bounds, then jump attack into the void and hit the King Bulblin 3 trigger well below the map. The Wii version can also use Map Glitch, but because LJAing isn't possible, the next best option is to back off the map and jump slash all the way to the fight trigger. HD, on the other hand, cannot use Map Glitch at all because it was patched, but the best non-Map Glitch option is only a few seconds slower. We hop off a tent to a narrow wall, then do a bit of parkour to hit the fight trigger from above. Not being able to do Map Glitch will matter a lot more on the way to Snow Peak, though. Oh, and for some reason, each quickspin only hits King Bulblin once on HD, as opposed to hitting 3 times on SD. I'm not sure why that is. Not much to say here, really. HD gets some stamps that are not at all out of the way. The Wii version has to pull a chandelier chain instead of LJing. Otherwise, the strategies are all the same up to Stallard, though Pull 1 skip and Death Sword skip are a bit harder on Wii for lack of camera control. The Stallard 1 cycle on GameCube and HD is very simple. Step 1, spin. Step 2, win. For some reason, even HD quickspins hit Stallard multiple times. But because Wii still has a cooldown on quickspins and can't chain them, one cycling Stallard requires some timing-intensive slash choreography instead. Well, the trick is called Early Snow Peak, even though it's not very early at this point. In any case, 100% can save time by going to Snow Peak without getting the reekfish scent, even though we need to get the coral earring. On both SD versions, this is as simple as using Map Glitch to run through the blizzard without getting voided out. HD still can't use Map Glitch, so this is a trickier proposition. The only known way for HD to reach Snow Peak early is to do a very precise super jump off of Wolfos and sail right past the edge of the void area. This is hard. In HD any %, the trick saves about 8 minutes, as it skips the fishing rod entirely, but since Hundo needs the fishing rod and coral earring anyway, Wolfos super jump only saves around a minute over getting the reekfish scent as intended. Snow Peak Ruins is easily the dungeon with the most sequence breaks, and fittingly, across the 3 versions, we see 3 somewhat different routes through the dungeon, none of which resembles the intended route very closely. The Wii route is the closest. We begin by talking to Yetta and Yetto and solving the block puzzle, all as intended. But then we can do a Jump Strike Moonboots bomb boost over the dividing wall in the courtyard and head to Darkhammer right away. I mentioned Moonboots earlier without explaining the glitch, but this is an especially cool use case, so I'll stop to explain it now. If Link is heavy, starts one of a few animations, and then becomes less heavy within a certain frame range, the game miscalculates his gravity and gives him extra height on the animation. The most common way to do this is to start, for example, a jump strike, while wearing the iron boots, then force unequip the iron boots on a certain frame to get the extra height. But in this application in Snow Peak Ruins, we can very cleverly use the deep snow itself to achieve moon boots without any carefully timed inputs. The snow gives Link the same heavy property as iron boots while he's in it, but as soon as the jump strike brings him above the snow, he becomes light again. GameCube's path is quite a bit faster. We go straight to the west side of the dungeon and LJA across to the heart piece chest, claw shot up through the ceiling, clip through the floor, trick the freezer into letting us climb the ladder, and jump down to get to Darkhammer. The Wii version, of course, can't do this LJA, and so it needs to go to this heart piece chest on the way to Blazetta in the second half of the dungeon. The HD route starts off the same as the GameCube route, but there's a stamp in this room, which GameCube has no reason to go to. From this stamp, the quickest path to Darkhammer is through this room, where we can clip through the ice wall by rotating Wolflink slightly. The rest of the dungeon is roughly the same on all versions, with the key super jump looking pretty awesome no matter which console you're on.
Yeah.
Getting to Temple of Time is pretty much exactly the same on GameCube and Wii, but this is a moment in the spotlight for HD. Remember that stamp we couldn't get back in Goron Mines because we didn't have the claw shot? It's time. But this isn't just going to be some boring backtracking. First, we'll re-enter Goron Mines with Early Elevator, the same trick GameCube used to enter Goron Mines the first time. HD couldn't do this before because there would have been no way past the guard at the top without being able to transform, but since we've already beaten Goron Mines, the guard has moved. Next, in the central room of the dungeon, the hanging magnets move on a cycle. We used to have to wait out a cycle, but I discovered that it's barely possible to make the first cycle by entering the room as Wolf, dashing to a specific spot on the platform, transforming, and immediately side-hopping and putting the iron boots on. Next up is a heart piece. We could have gotten this heart piece just fine on the first trip, but now that we have Jump Strike, we can do this very silly glitch to slide up the magnetic wall quickly, instead of trudging up. Finally, we grab the 2 stamps and save warp to leave. I went into learning HD Hundo thinking that this segment was going to feel really boring, but it ended up being one of my favorites in the entire run. There's still one more unique trick for HD on the way to Temple of Time. To get from North Farron to the Sacred Grove, GameCube and Wii can use moon boots to get out of bounds in the same place we did the super jump in Farron Twilight to get to the Master Sword. This skips running all the way over to Russell to talk to him and fly over with the Golden Cucko. HD can't do this because of the same invisible wall that prevented EMS from working in the first place, but we can still skip the Golden Cucko. Check this out.
Damn.
The GameCube and Wii routes are nearly identical in Temple of Time. On GameCube, we LJA to skip getting Uku, but Wii 1.0's smaller triggers come in handy again here, and we can just run right by Uku. GameCube also LJAs through this electric fence before it turns back on to skip bringing a pod or statue over. This can be replaced with a spin or bomb boost on Wii. Both versions do Door of Time skip, which has a pretty simple and consistent setup for GameCube, but the setup only works on Wii if you go into the options and turn the pointer controls off. It is possible and faster to just eyeball it, but it's hard to do that consistently because of how precise the required angle is. On HD, as far as we know, Door of Time skip is not possible at all, so HD sees the substantial change of actually needing to escort the statue all the way back through the dungeon. One neat strategy involved in the statue escort is the scales skip, which works because backhopping and side-hopping don't register weight properly on the scales. This section is a lot like the post-MDH day-night cycle. We need to get to nighttime both for Poe Collection and to get the wooden statue from the Stallhounds in the area south of Castletown as part of Ilya's memory quest. So the idea is to use the overworld collection we have available in the most efficient way to spend the daytime. Like the post-MDH cycle, the 3 routes choose from a common set of overworld collection options and end up doing pretty similar things. But this cycle is special in the GameCube version because of wallets. GameCube is in the unique position of wanting to have all 24 of the golden bugs by the end of this cycle in order to get the largest capacity wallet, which holds 1,000 rupees, from Agatha on the extra trip to Castletown it makes to learn Great Spin. This is because Cave of Ordeals is a great source of rupees, so it'd be wasteful to only have the 600 rupee capacity wallet in Cave of Ordeals. As I explained earlier, the Wii version will not be making this extra trip to Castletown and will only go there again at the end of the game, so it doesn't matter how many golden bugs it has for now. And although HD is going to make the extra Castletown trip for Great Spin just like GameCube, it doesn't need a wallet upgrade because all of the wallets in HD are larger than their SD counterparts. Rather than 300, 600, and 1000 rupee capacities, they have 500, 1000, and 2000 rupee capacities. What all this means for this cycle is that GameCube's route includes some additional nighttime collection in Lanayru Field that the other versions can put off until the nighttime that follows Cave of Ordeals, even though there are golden bugs in that area. This makes the optimal GameCube day-night cycle very tight. Just a few mistakes over the half-hour-long cycle, or even just one bad mistake, will make it impossible to reach the final pose before daytime. Running against the in-game clock like this is one of my favorite things in Hundo, so this is one of my favorite parts of the GameCube route. It works out nicely that the Wii version wouldn't benefit from a super tight day-night cycle because it's usually not possible to backflip off of Epona on the Wii version. There just isn't a button for it. This means that dismounting Epona is slow, and the collection done in this cycle involves dismounting Epona quite a few times. HD still has some ramifications of not getting the Master Sword early to work through here. GameCube and Wii got both Elden Field golden bugs before Morpheal, but there's a grotto on the west side of the field that HD needs to enter for a stamp, and was unable to before Morpheal because it couldn't transform. HD finally gets this golden bug here. HD also skipped the heart piece on the cliff earlier because it didn't have the claw shot yet, and the best time to get that turns out to be during the hot spring water minigame. In fact, because sword recoil is removed entirely on HD, we can use the HD exclusive strategy of LJAing straight into the cliff face to skip the vines. Not to worry. The spring water stays hot for 2 minutes, which is about a minute longer than it takes to get to the Goron. Lastly, we'll now see the GameCube route reap a reward of having used King Bulblin 1 to set time of day in the post-MDH cycle. After getting the final pose of the cycle, we do some daytime collection in Lanayru Field, including getting the heart piece in the ice cave. The first 2 puzzles in the cave can be skipped with a Moon Boots bomb boost and some LJAs. Optimally, HD does these 2 skips, completes the 3rd puzzle, and then uses the final gate to void back to the cave entrance to leave. There is a very precise way to skip the 3rd puzzle with a double LJA, but it leaves Link in jail. The only ways out are death warping, which is not a great option given we have a lot of health and just got a heart piece, or save warping, which for reasons I won't go into, would spawn us back in Upper Zora's River. Well, the HD route had to do everything there is to do in Upper Zora's River to spend daytime after getting the Master Sword, but since GameCube used King Bulblin to advance time of day instead, we didn't need to do Iza's second minigame yet. So save warping back to Upper Zora's River is actually useful in this route, allowing the 3rd puzzle skip, skipping backtracking through the cave, and replacing a normal warp we'd otherwise need to do to get to the minigame. City in the Sky has some pretty awesome differences to highlight, and is one of my favorite sections of the run on all 3 versions. In the very first room, GameCube LJAs across the gaps, but Wii claw shots from the very edge of the platform and then jumps and jump slashes across the second gap. The Wii strategy is actually faster than LJAing, but we don't do it on GameCube.
Imagine I'm doing this
because the claw
faster.
shot only reaches the vines if Link is on the very edge, and standing there without accidentally falling off is very difficult on GameCube. On Wii, on the other hand, the game automatically stops Link at ledges when he's in aiming mode, so the strategy is actually quite easy. All versions go to get the small key first, with GameCube and HD using an LJA to save a very small amount of time over claw-shotting the vines. They then head over to the other side of the dungeon for the second claw shot. But HD doesn't need to go through very many rooms to get to Aralphos. Don't ask me why, but on HD, loading a certain gate in the east wing of Lakebed Temple causes this gate in City in the Sky to fail to load as long as you don't close out of the game entirely in between. That's just how it is. It's completely unavoidable, so it's even allowed in glitchless speedruns. In the rooms that gate unloading skips, GameCube does 3 LJAs. For the first, we can still skip the puzzle by side-hopping across the falling blocks with the iron boots. The second LJA is actually an enemy LJA off of a tile worm rather than a boomerang LJA, so we can do it on the Wii version as well. The third LJA is a boomerang LJA, but it can be replaced with an enemy LJA by bringing a keys over in the boomerang. Aralphos skip is possible on all versions. Wii and HD's pointer and gyro aiming make it far more difficult than control stick aiming, but these can be turned off in the options menu if desired. In 100%, the Hawkeye can be used for fine aiming in Aralphos skip, and while this costs an equip on Wii and GameCube, HD can use the Hawkeye without losing time because we can equip it without pausing. Speaking of the options menu, this is where HD Hundo switches to third-person aiming mode. GameCube can only aim in first person, and Wii can only aim in third, but HD can switch between the two, and I discovered that in third-person aiming mode, we can clawshot through walls. This one saves about 30 seconds over
That's
clawshotting
fucking
through the
cool.
room as we see GameCube do, but we haven't seen the last of third-person clawshot clipping just yet. But also, let's not forget that after a position setup to get in just the right spot, GameCube does this epic LJA across the entire room, saving 1 entire second over using the clawshot targets. After this, the HD and GameCube routes converge, making their way through the second half of the dungeon to the boss key with some sick movement and a bunch of boomerang LJAs. This spells trouble for the Wii version, but the Wii route has a trick up its sleeve, doing the entire second half of the dungeon in reverse. We start by backtracking to the central room and clawshotting through the ceiling to get to the boss key, which skips a lot of tightrope walking. We clawshot up to the Po, then head across to the P-Hat cycle room. Wii 1.0 has a special quirk in this room. These bars are like any other wall on other versions, but on 1.0 they're clawshottable for some reason. Put this together with the Wii exclusive acute angle clawshot clipping and you've got yourself a P-Hat cycle skip. This reverse city route ends with a jump strike LJA off a targetable clawshot medallion to get down to the heart piece in the Big Baba room. This is also Wii exclusive, as invisible walls were added over the railings in this room on GameCube. The routes all converge entering the north wing of the dungeon on the way to Argarok, but
If I discovered a
GameCube and
glitch, I would
HD
name it
LJA
Tiny
to
Tim.
skip turning these fans on. The Wii version can skip turning them on with some clever clawshotting. This strategy is risky because Kargaroks are likely to come harass you. The Fan Tower and Argarok strategies are the same on all versions, but for some reason the fans rotate more slowly on HD, making it easier to reach the top without missing a cycle. Full disclosure, Cave of Ordeals, the post-Cave of Ordeals Nighttime Collection Cycle, and Palace of Twilight are not done in the same order on all three routes. But unlike the complex situation around Goron Mines and Lakebed earlier, it basically doesn't matter what order these things are done in. Palace can be anywhere in the mix. Just to make it easier to see the meaningful differences, I'm going to pretend they all do Palace of Twilight first, then Cave of Ordeals, and then the Nighttime Collection Cycle. In any case, after City in the Sky is where GameCube and HD finally make that extra Castletown trip that I've been talking about for like half an hour or something. They both learn Great Spin and play the second star minigame for the Giant Quiver, which will be useful in Cave of Ordeals. GameCube, having gotten all the golden bugs already, gives them all to Agatha for the giant wallet and then buys the magic armor to empty the wallet, also in preparation for Cave of Ordeals. The Wii route, in contrast, seems pretty unconcerned about Cave of Ordeals. What gives? We'll find out very soon what, in fact, gives. Once in Palace of Twilight, there's basically nothing to comment on. The routes are identical except for a few boomerang LJAs that save very small amounts of time for GameCube and HD. The biggest difference is the Phantom Zant fights. On GameCube and HD, we can do 1 cycles with Great Spin, but because the Wii version can't chain quick spins, each Phantom Zant fight is a 4 cycle. Great Spin would barely speed this up, which is a part of why it wasn't worth making a special trip to get it on Wii. Cave of Ordeals is Wii's moment to shine, but we need to start with some context. Completing Cave of Ordeals is not in the definition of 100%. We don't have to do it. But there are 3 Poes in the cave, and those are required. So on GameCube, we fight our way through to floor 44, where the third Poe soul is, grab it, and save warp out of the cave. No skips, no sequence breaks, just a pure combat test. The entire time, we try not to take any damage at all so as to preserve Great Spin, which one-shots most enemies. It's very challenging and very fun to do well. HD, as we might expect, adds a stamp on every 10th floor, so although completing the cave isn't explicitly required, the stamp on the final floor means we need to get through the entire thing. Until recently, this was just a longer version of GameCube's Cave of Ordeals, though made far less stressful with an HD exclusive glitch that dupes bottle contents, which we can use to heal to regain Great Spin as many times as we need. But I also found a way to use that third-person clawshot clipping that saved 30 seconds in City in the Sky here. Every 10th floor is a fairy checkpoint, and every floor after a fairy requires a new item to progress. The 11th floor requires Spinner, the 21st requires Ball and Chain, and so on. So each post-fairy floor has a clawshot target at its entrance, so that a player who goes to a floor that they don't have the required item for can return to the fairy and use it to warp out of the cave. With very precise and completely blind third-person clawshot clips, we can clawshot to these targets through the wall. This skips the fairy cutscenes, but because of the odd way that flags work in Cave of Ordeals, each clip also automatically clears the last floor before the next fairy. All told, this can save up to 2 minutes or so, though the clips are precise enough that it's more realistic to save closer to 1.5 minutes with good execution. But somehow, these clips are not the height of glitchiness in Cave of Ordeals. Throughout this whole explanation, Wii Hundo has had some very cool strategies, but there have only been a few times when it was able to save time over the others. This is the big moment. The Wii route didn't prepare much for Cave of Ordeals because on Wii 1.0, extinguishing the torches on any floor of Cave of Ordeals opens the door in the next room. This means that we can clear one floor, then hustle all the way to the next fairy without killing any more enemies, stopping only to get the 3 Poe souls and occasionally to get some rupees. The Wii version is in and out of Cave of Ordeals in about 9 minutes, as opposed to GameCube's roughly 16 minutes and HD's roughly 19 minutes. The post-Cave of Ordeals night cycle is pretty similar across versions. Wii and HD still need to do collection in Lanayru Field, which GameCube did earlier to get the golden bugs. This is where HD does the neat void out strat in the Ice Cave. The exact collection we've left to do here on each version is different, but the differences are pretty insubstantial. On the way into Hyrule Castle, all versions finish everything that needs to be done in Castletown. HD has a bit extra to do because we get a stamp from Gengal, Giovanni's cat. This means we need to heal Giovanni in his house, go to Telma's bar to talk to him, and then go back to his house. Hyrule Castle is basically identical for GameCube and Wii, but it takes a little bit longer on HD, mostly but not entirely because of stamps. The fast way to skip the first barrier is to collect a rupee while charging a jump strike, so that Link automatically releases a jump attack past the barrier trigger. HD can't do this because of a base mechanic change that I don't think I've mentioned yet. While both SD versions give you the "you gotta whatever color rupee" text for the first rupee of each color other than green that you get after having visited the title screen, HD only gives this text once per playthrough for each rupee. GameCube and Wii have save warped since they last saw yellow rupee text in Cave of Ordeals, and so can use the text for this trick, but HD stands no chance of avoiding yellow rupee text for the entire game up to this point, so we just great spin the bokoblins instead. This one only costs a couple of seconds, but the rupee text situation also allows both SD versions to skip the first Dark Nut with the same trick, which saves considerably more time. Just like King Bulblin 3 in the desert, King Bulblin 4 only gets hit once per quick spin on HD, but we can still one-cycle him with Great Fairy Tears and Great Spin. Stamps get the final word in this comparison. One of the two Hyrule Castle stamps is in the treasure room. To enter the treasure room, we need all 3 small keys, which means going to the graveyard and doing the lantern and owl statues puzzle. But we can skip moving one of the owl statues with an LJA, and it is possible to skip both owl statues with a very precise bomb boost, but as far as I know, nobody has attempted this in Hundo. Getting to the treasure room also requires defeating the final Dark Nut, which GameCube and Wii skip by claw-shotting past it. That's all. But in conclusion, since we're on the subject, I have a few more personal notes on how it felt for me to run Hundo on the different versions. I am far more experienced playing the GameCube version than either of the others. I had barely touched TP-Wii and TP-HD prior to running 100% on them, and I only ran each of them for a couple of weeks, so I still don't feel super comfortable with even some of the basic controls of the game. It's impossible for me to give a fair description of whether any given strat is harder on one version than another because...
That's a cool video. Damn.
Now you can use VTube Studio with your webcam, but I don't own a webcam, so I don't use a webcam. I do not own a webcam.
After 4.5 years, I have now officially graduated with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering.
Congratulations!
Time to relax and look for a job.
Congratulations, and I hope you find a job, and I hope you get a wonderful job, a great job. Congratulations, a degree. Maybe one day I'll get a degree. Never mind. Nope. Never mind. Nope. Me, a degree? It could happen. Oh my god, bro. This f***ing... Now you just start a VTuber Academy. Like my show, VTuber Academy? A PhD in VTuberology? I feel like a lot of people would disagree with...
Let's see, what else? So no foreshadowing.
Food. Hello guys. Today we have a list of top 5 super foreshadowing. Número 5. Talk. Número 4.
Damn.
Número 3.
I still don't know how he freaking fell off.
3, 2, 1. 1.
Número 2. Food.
Babe, how that peach cobbler tasting?
It's alright. I had better at the school cafeteria.
Honorable mention.
Go. Go. Step on it. go.
Número 1.
Damn. Jesus. Good stuff, good stuff. God, looks delicious. Looks so good. Jesus Christ.
Allow your mind to wander and ask yourself, who among all of gaming sits on a pedestal most high as arguably its most legendary hero? When mystical relics need claiming, landscapes explored, or dungeons must be conquered, when a demonic monster needs slaying, when time and space are at threat of being unraveled, what mythical figure is best suited to such a cause? Like many of you, I can think of no such hero besides Link, the hero of time from the Legend of Zelda series. In those games, the young man with the spirit most courageous has been blessed.
I mean, that's a hero of the Twilight, because the hero of time and I don't know. It's going into all the lore is difficult because they're all different heroes, but they're all descendant of the same one. But they're all different people.
By the gods,
because this Link from Twilight Princess isn't the same Link as the one from Ocarina of Time.
Wields weapons of ultimate power and always manages to set wrong right. And
that's the hero of time.
Power and always
this one right there is a hero of time.
Manages to set wrong right and often curb the total annihilation of his kingdom and even world. Incarnations of hate itself, wizards gone mad with dark power, and even evil spirits warping entire dimensions have been bested again and again across multiple eon-spanning timelines by the hero bearing the blade of evil's bane. Now again, consider this. What games present the greatest challenge, the harshest of foes, testing the player nearly as much as the character he controls? If recent memory serves, this would be the Dark Souls series of games, with its latest entry, Elden Ring, often inspiring the question as to which protagonist or hero of legend could manage to slay the mad gods, embodiments of order, and trek through the tumultuous land between. Could Link beat Elden Ring? As to which version of Link we'll be considering, we will be using the Hero of Time from both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
That's not even fair, dude. Take out Majora's Mask Link, because I'm pretty sure Link, Ocarina of Time Link can do it by himself. Yeah, Ocarina of Time adult Link. Because legit, if you add Majora's Mask and it's over, just fierce deity. No matter what the hell gets in his fucking way, it just gets destroyed.
As well as all of the equipment and power-ups he received across both games. If this sounds a little unfair off the bat, we will be at least initially barring the Hero of Time from obtaining weapons or enchantments from Elden Ring itself. We mostly want to explore if Link, as we know him most famously, could beat the game's bosses given his own equipment and abilities. However, we will resolve the hypothetical scenario where he starts with nothing as the tarnished from Elden Ring does. And he can amplify himself with, say, Elden Ring shards and etc. Funny enough, this is somewhat consistent with Link's crossover narratives, as he pretty much had all of his equipment when seeking the Soul Calibur in the GameCube version of the second game. So this premise is in line with that. Just imagine he was traveling to the land between rather than seeking out the Soul Edge. For those maybe wondering why I'm picking this Link in particular, you can check out my various videos about this hero and others which help prove that the Ocarina of Time Link is in fact the strongest of the franchise and would be
Actually, no, it's not. What the fuck is it? A Link Between Worlds Link? No. A Link to the Past Link, I think, is the strongest Link because Ganon had all three. What? I think the right one. Link to the Past. Yeah, it's a Link to the Past Link. That's the strongest Link because Ganon had all three. All three. He completed the Triforce and had all that power. And that little motherfucker just like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck. So actually the strongest Link is a Link to the Past Link, not the Hero Time.
1v1 in an all-out fight. That's not really the point of this video though, and if you think any Link is more powerful than the Hero of Time, then you can simply observe how he himself performs in this video and simply scale your preferred Link higher. You would be wrong to do so, but whatever. With that said, we will be comparing the respective lore of the series, rather than gameplay mechanics, as those are obviously less canonical, such as, let's say, bomb explosions doing a similar amount of damage as the Master Sword against bosses, when we obviously know that narratively the Blade of Evil's Bane is divinely empowered and would naturally be so far beyond pretty much every other of Link's weapons per the lore. Same goes for Elden Ring. Throughout the video, I'd like to reintroduce you all to
That's the Hero of the Wind, though.
Arrow
The Hero of the
Flame,
Wild,
as he
I mean.
will be sharing his Elden Ring expertise when describing the threats Link would face on his journey as we chart the bosses he'd encounter in ascending order of power level. Does Link, with his Triforce of Courage, Master Sword, Fierce Deity Mask, and more, manage to defeat even the DLC's final boss of Radon? Or would his Hylian goddess-born power be dwarfed by a mere nameless mini-boss from the land between? Let's find out.
Nah, dude, Fierce Deity freaking owns, freaking
The first opponent of any note that Link would face is the weakest of the demigods, Godric Grafted. Godric is considered the runt of the demigods, so weak that he deems it necessary to graft the limbs tarnished unto himself in order to increase his combat effectiveness. Godric is, for lack of a better phrase, a piping hot pile of ass. Godric challenged Melania during the Shattering and lost so bad that it's said that he groveled and begged for his own life. He fights a fairly early game Tarnished who hasn't really done anything but fight a few nobodies. There is no real in-lore feats for Godric besides him getting beaten up by Melania. We will assume he is comparable to the upper echelon of the beasts in Elden Ring, excluding stronger beasts like Rava and the Dragon. The Falling Star Beast, when coming down from orbit, is capable of creating a crater from the impact that stretches across a notable area, being marked on the map and being many times the size of the Tarnished. Based on the depth of the crater and for the sake of Godric not being a total loser, going with the assumption that the ground was vaporized, we end up with a large town level for Godric. Godric's way of fighting is essentially just swinging his axe around like a madman, trying to use brute strength and fire to overwhelm his opponents.
Considering the lackluster nature of the first foes the Hero of Time would face, as just explained, he'd easily prove capable of overpowering the opposition towards the onset of his journey in the lands between. We'd have to trace back the Zelda series to nearly its utmost foundations, as in the backstory of Skyward Sword, we learn that the goddess of men, Hylia, sent her people towards the heavens in a floating island town known as Skyloft. To further protect her followers, she as well sealed off the earth beneath them by forming a cloud barrier far beyond even the range of traditional birds. Clouds are gigantic and would require massive amounts of energy to simply conjure through her holy magic. Hyrule Historia does suggest this barrier truly separates sky and land, rather than simply being one patch of cloud simply as wide as Skyloft itself, with plenty of evidence that the Zelda series does take place on a more or less similar sized planet as our own. We share constellations and similar astronomical models with Hyrule. The series boasts an expansive sea with other continents, so per the lore, even when being conservative, Hylia would still have had to output enough energy to annihilate an entire island, compared to Godric, who at his best could maybe destroy a large town. To trace this back to Link, however, not only do most Zeldas across the series sport the literal power of Hylia, usually with the Triforce of Wisdom on top of that, Link being the true champion of Hyrule and the main combatant of the series. He mostly has to save Zelda in the first place. Not only that, but the Master Sword itself boasts statements of being infused with Zelda and or Hylia's energy, that being the infinite power known as the Light Force. Adding to this, like I said, Hylia was near death when she created
Wait, does Link start with the Master Sword or no?
the cloud barrier, with Demise being the entity to gravely wound her and would as well be capable of outputting at least equal levels of energy as the goddess. Demise was bested by the Hero of the Sky, who then gloats that his reincarnation could succeed where he failed. Said reincarnation being Ganondorf, who is stated the greatest threat in all of Hyrule's history, which would include Demise. Hyrule is the planet retroactively, and Demise literally wanted to destroy it and kill everybody. So Ganondorf, especially with his own Triforce piece, is for sure stronger than Demise, who the Hero of Time bested, at least in 2 out of the 3 timelines. All this to say that the likes of Divine Beast, Dancing Lion, Godric the Grafted, and so on would find themselves suffering a pretty decisive defeat. Keep in mind that Link is a master fighter with all of his weapons, channeling his literal power through each and every one of them, and he has plenty of experience fighting giant sword wielders, even his weaker incarnations. He also has the Fire Tunic to aid him against extreme temperatures, with ice arrows as well, possibly countering Godric's own elemental abilities.
When it comes to the levels of power between proper demigods and the lesser beings in Elden Ring, the gap is massive. Compared to even the strongest of those outside of the Carian royal family, the Golden Lineage, and the Dragons, the gap is simply huge. The vast majority of these beings should be capable of at least temporarily holding off or briefly contending with the likes of Starscourge Radahn, evident by the in-game cutscene of a younger Radahn being pinned down and defeated by Morgoth. There are a great many people who, for some reason, believe that the stars that Radahn was holding were just asteroids, due to the meteor that followed when he stops holding the stars, revealing the Eternal City. But we know that the Carian Academy, and mages in general, draw a distinction between meteorites and celestial bodies. There are also a great many globes and telescopes within the Carian Academy, where Radahn spent his childhood, pretty explicitly showing that they are aware of the planet they are on, satellites such as the moon, and what stars are. We know that when it is said that Radahn has halted the movement and cycles of the stars, they are talking specifically about stars in the traditional sense. We can assert that those in the next tier are not quite as strong as Radahn was, capable of halting many stars himself, but we can gather that they are at least comparable enough, making me comfortable in saying that they should be at least star level. In this tier, we have beings like Renala and R'Lana, Moog, and Margit. By the time we see Renala in the main game, she is a shadow of her former self. Her sister, and 20 other Carrion Royal Knights were all it took for them to fight and hold back the entirety of the Golden Host, fighting the Golden Host led by Radagon to a standstill twice in her prime. R'hllana is her twin sister, the other of the Twin Moons. She is seemingly the right hand of Mesmer, having followed him upon his crusade. They are the most straightforward of the opponents in this tier, both of them using rather powerful magic on the latter end of the spectrum are the first proper demigods, Moog, and Morgott. In order to properly explain the following tiers, as many of them deal with beings such as the Formless Mother, we must discuss what an outer god is. In the beginning, there was only the one great. At some point, the Greater Will formed, alongside the Frenzied Flame and other outer gods. At some time after that, the Greater Will fractured the one great, creating everything that is. Thus, we can ascertain that an outer god is one of those beings that existed as some sort of direct offshoots of the one great. When utilizing the boons and abilities of their patrons, it is fair to say that they should be comparable to the Hero of Time's abilities and resistances granted by his own goddess. Blood Flame is, specifically, the blood of the Formless Mother being weaponized. Moog's use of Blood Flame will likely make for a problem for Link, but he lacks the versatility to truly give Link a run in terms of skill, considering his own bag of tricks and experience. He will, however, find a greater challenge in his brother Morgott, the Omen King. Not only does Morgott possess the ability to imbue his weapons with the rotting curse of the Omen, but Morgott also had the raw strength to defeat a younger Radahn. While it is likely that the Radahn that we see fighting against Malenia is much stronger due to him being much larger and therefore older, if Radahn is actively fighting in the Shattering, that would mean that he has finished his training under the Onyx Lord and should already be capable of holding the stars. All that said though, Morgott may find himself in a bit of a rough spot, as the vast majority of his attacks seem to have holy energy to them, something Link's body will be capable of withstanding.
When it comes to the scope of power needed to shake the very stars, the goddess's chosen hero boasts a fairly succinct display of such caliber. In Majora's Mask, upon defeating the Skull Kid, we're taken into a pocket dimension inside of the moon, wherein the demon has apparently generated his own celestial body. It really doesn't get any simpler than that. Majora has the power to create an entire alternate reality, sun included. The young hero of time then topples the great evil with his own dark power, quickly and effortlessly crushing Majora while channeling the fierce deity, a reservoir of dark and godly power harnessed through the ultimate magical mask. Not only is this reality and star seemingly a casual feat performed by Majora, with Link then defeating more and more powerful forms and evolutions of the demon. But on top of that, this act of solar creation could even extend within the realm of annihilating entire solar systems. If we assert that the distance from the Majora generated land to his sun is equal or relative to the gap between Earth and our sun, as it would mean that Majora could create or likely destroy a star with the range of near 93.238 million miles away, with the distance one's energy could fill or travel naturally amplifying the destructive force therein. Either way, Link would be able to output solar degrees of magical and destructive potency, and more importantly, easily defeat powerful demonic entities, likely even beyond such a scale. So foes such as Renala to even the Lord of the Blood Moon and so on would probably fare as well against the Hero of Time as the likes of Majora and his various empowered transformed states. Like Arrow alluded to, holy energy is probably one of the worst weapons one could hope to channel against Link, as he is powered himself by the goddess's energy and wields it in many of his weapons such as the Master Sword and light arrows. In all likelihood, given his power level compared to his enemies so far, their attacks could actually make Link stronger if anything. With queens and demigods slain before him, the adventure-seeking hero marches forward.
The next tier is when we get to the proper challenges for Link, the near top of the strength list in lore. In this tier, we have Godfrey, Mesmer, Nidra, the Elden Beast, Melania, and Malekith, the Black Blade, those that are on the level of an Elden Lord. At the end of the game, as you go to confront Marika, she is freed from her confines, revealing that Radagon and Marika have been the same person. This, however, does not scale the likes of, say, Renala or R'Lana to Marika via the war with the Golden Host. This is because Radagon and Marika were separate entities until they were joined together in marriage after the banishment of Godfrey. Speaking of, just before you go on to do battle with Radagon, you have to defeat Godfrey in single combat. After doing so, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, remarks that by defeating him, the Tarnished has proven that he has strength befitting a lord. This line alone puts Godfrey above all of the previous story bosses that must be fought before this, and thus directly implies that Godfrey would have been able to fight with Radagon. After besting the Elden Beast, you are given the Elden Remembrance. The Remembrance directly refers to the Elden Beast as the incarnation of the concept of order, and Marika herself was capable of shattering the Elden Ring, which is simply another form of the Elden Beast, described as a mysterious concept that defines the world itself. We can say that her power and those that scale comparatively to her should be strong enough to shatter these universe-defining concepts. Of these fighters, though, he is likely going to have the most trouble with Melania and Malekith. Melania is the twin sister to Miquella, and is often referred to as one of the strongest of the demigods, likely second only to Radahn. Due to the dual nature of her parents, Melania as a child was trained by a master swordsman who, with a flowing sword granted to him by a fairy, managed to defeat the outer god of Rot. Given that we know that the outer gods predate and supply concepts to the dimensions and myriad alternate worlds of Elden Ring, and with Melania being considered unrivaled at the time of her training being completed, she should scale above this as well. The Scarlet Rot is a sickness that directly comes from the outer god of Rot, and is capable of eating not only a person's body, but their mind as well. Her Scarlet Aeonia is a blast of pure Scarlet Rot. This attack is capable of covering kilometers of distance, completely ruining all of Caelid and tainting it with a swamp that is completely inundated with the Scarlet Rot. Malekith, the Black Blade and sworn shadow of Queen Mare. He possesses the ability to wield the concept of death, taken straight from the Elden Ring. This is likely going to be a Hack's ability that is the most difficult for Link to overcome, given the concept of death that Malekith swings about is seemingly death in its purest, most conceptual state.
To match or surpass the power of, say, Star Scourge Radahn and the like, there is the more generous interpretation of Majora's feat, like detailed. It depends on if you think he simply created, say, a small orb of a planet and just a sun nebulously in the distance, as opposed to more so making a solar body akin to the actual model, which our universe requires, as habitable planets need the sun to pretty much be within a specific distance from the world it orbits. It's either that or Majora made a star much closer to the planet while also nullifying the heat, which would pretty much boil any liquid, burn the surface, or blind any inhabitants on that world. Without means such as that, to defeat foes which have tamed entire solar systems, the best route Link would take is drawing on his greater reserves of universal levels of power. Hyrule, as I alluded to, is simply a larger planet within a greater universe, with stars, other planets, and entire constellations, such as with our own reality. This is one of the rare instances where the Zelda universe coincides with our own. However, as anyone who's played the games would know, Zelda is actually host to many alternate worlds, realities, and dimensions. With the likes of Termina, a parallel plane traversable by portals, the Twilight Realm, Sacred Realm, Subrosia, and possibly even Lorule are all interchangeably known as parallel worlds or counterpart universes compared to Hyrule. The official Zelda website clarified that the creation goddesses of Hyrule, Din, Nehru, and Faeror likely created each and every one of these parallel realities as their energy poured through the cracks in the fabric of time and space. Millions of them, to be exact. Not only does Link have offensive and defensive spells channeling said multiversal levels of power, he also literally sports a measure of their strength within the Triforce of courage. Each piece of the Triforce imbues the host with divine levels of potential, which the hero of time managed to achieve. It's the ultimate power, the force behind all things, and Link has a third of it in his literal being. And when combined with the Master Sword, already imbued with another goddess's quote-unquote infinite power on top of that, Link can defeat his fellow Triforce wielder. Even if Link, at his peak mind you, every sage amulet added to his own power, mastering each element, great fairy magic multiplying his durability and magical abilities, with the fierce deity mask included, merely represents a sliver of even a single Triforce goddess, he would still most likely be able to output or endure energy equal to that of hundreds or thousands of universes being created. Scarlet Rot, however, is a unique status effect, meaning Link would have to either prioritize the use of his godly shields or even healing items such as potions and fairies to fend off its infection. He also boasts the Song of Healing, which managed to cure the madness born from the demonic nature of Majora, altering all of reality, mind you, from the minds of many Terminians. Even similar curses managing to warp other beings into monsters via the power of the Twilight, which were mostly countered by the Triforce of Courage or the Master Sword, as seen in Twilight Princess. All of this, combined with Link's higher magical power compared to said wielders of Scarlet Rot, leads us to believe that, while he may have to recover from some of its effects, he would likely overwhelm the sword while leaning on his protective magics and
Nah, if anything, he'd play a Song of Healing and fucking cure Melania. Adding her to the party, dog.
curse countering holy powers. Maybe he'd have to find the Armorer's Cookbook number 6 and whip up some boluses after the fight to fully recover, as his greatest threat so far lies and waits.
Finally, standing at the very pinnacle of the in-game bosses is Radahn, consort of Miquella. During the Shattering, Radahn tried to attack Limgrave, only for Godric to hide, and he also seemed to have invaded Lanedale extremely early, only to be repelled by Morgott. However, by the end of the Shattering, it was fairly solid knowledge that Radahn was the strongest of the demigods. Radahn not only learned magic on a scale not even his mother, the Carrion Queen, and Ranni the Witch seemed capable of replicating, but in his base form, he was able to easily overwhelm Melania, seemingly beating her arm out of place, waiting for her to put it back in before hitting her arm again. Even after utilizing Scarlet Aeonia directly on Radahn's back, he did not die, instead staying conscious and almost killing Melania even after all that, the Blade of Miquella having to be dragged away by her knights in order to save her life. This is the level of power that Radahn should have in his prime, able to easily defeat someone who should be at least on a lord level of power. And while we can tell that the consort Radahn is not the same as the prime Radahn that fought Melania, as he is slightly smaller, we can tell he is still likely at least relative to his prime strength, as he's considered revived, resurrected with O's body, simply being a vessel for his soul, even retaining all of his abilities and skills, though displayed to a much greater extent than his mindless star-scorched state. In addition to being returned to his prime strength by this revival, he's also further amplified by Miquella's light, the direct divine energy of another lord-level being. Miquella, also known as Kindly Miquella, is often referred to and implied to be the most fearsome and terrifying of the Empyreans, or those that have the potential of the gods. Miquella, before his ascension, possesses the ability of charm and sweep. The charm ability is powerful enough to affect even beings like Moog, and unless possessing the Great Rune that he discarded, it can also affect lord-level beings such as the Tarnished. After his ascension into godhood, however, he's shown to be able to vastly increase Radahn's already notable speed, and gives Radahn massive AoE attacks each time he swings that are capable of covering vast swaths of the battlefield. In conjunction with flight, and presumably the full scope of his multi-solar system spanning magic and his own skill with the blade, it is likely that this will be the most difficult fight that Link has ever faced.
To face Radahn at his full strength, it's worth recounting the highest possible line of argumentation available to Link. Naturally, as Link is the arbiter of a piece of the very power which gave birth to the Zelda cosmology, that being a third of the Triforce, this is extremely important as each of them predated time and space, existing outside of both entirely as they gave birth to such things. Nehru in particular, which Link's invulnerable shield would be drawing power from, is implied to have literally created logic from the chaotic nothingness which predated the reality of Hyrule. Order itself did not exist in the universe until Nehru ordained it so, and truly nothing had formed before the goddesses created it. It was simply chaos, similar to the legend of the Greek gods and their creation myth. While simply having a single Triforce piece doesn't inherently mean much, as is the case with the Hero of Twilight, one would have to train properly to hone this power of the goddesses. That being said, given the Hero of Time's power growth, mastery, multipliers of his power, it would actually be totally reasonable to scale his peak to at least some semblance of even merely one of these time-transcending, order-creating deities. He literally has access to their abilities via the Master Sword, spells, and the strength which Ganondorf states that the Triforce of Courage blesses him with. Here is where speed would as well become paramount to detail, as both Link and those within Elden Ring can move in spaces without the flow of time, circumventing the speed formula, making them faster than any possible finite quantifiable speed. Ocarina of Time has dialogue stating as much, and in a series of magic subspaces, it wouldn't really be fair to accept this on anything short of face value. Like, there are 3 goddesses, demons, other dimensions, magic. I really don't think it's that hard to believe that this dialogue is true, that there are places in the Zelda overworld that just have no time. Even ignoring that, all 3 of the goddesses existed before time and created it, with Link sporting even the slightest percentage of their powers, still placing him in such a tier of time-transcending speed at his full potential. In summary, if the question at hand is, could Link beat Elden Ring, then the answer is yes. His arsenal of equipment, combat experience, and divine power would allow him to pretty solidly clear the base game, barring some difficulty around certain bosses or status effects which cast death itself, literally. However, Link does have potions and fairies to circumvent this in a way which we believe would grant him the win more times than not. Compared to warriors which can make craters, Link stands above beings which could coat the entire planet in a defensive barrier. Against those that can halt the stars, the Hero of Time bested the very same. And when it comes to channeling the might of multiple universes, or even being charged with strength which gave birth to order itself, Link sports such power in spades.
Yet, when we include the DLC, the differences in Zelda and Soulsborne bosses' fights start to become more apparent in general. Using the boss's gameplay tactics, which is really the only way to judge their ability since most of them don't really do anything in the cutscenes, the fact of the matter is that Elden Ring is just a much harder game than even the most difficult of Zelda titles. So when facing Radahn at his full power, someone who more or less equals Link at his best in terms of raw stats, the Hero of Time would most likely be overwhelmed by what amounts to pretty much a bullet hell encounter of someone nuking the field with light beams with strength equal to himself. He just hasn't had to contend with blasts of this size, scope, or potency. While he could hang in there for a time, maybe deflect some of the light-based attacks with a mirror shield or absorb some of Radahn's magic to his blade, the case is that Link would probably be overwhelmed.
The silver lining to all of this is that Link actually is relative to Elden Ring's most powerful boss, and that's even barring the possibility that he'd more so replace the Tarnished outright, meaning that until now, we've only granted Link his typical kit, rather than allow him the ability to traverse the open world, absorb shards of the Great One itself, or the power-ups within Elden Ring.
If that's the case, that game's protag is a literal nobody and amps himself to being capable of beating Radahn, whereas Link is just a built different godly hero out of the gate with the most potential out of any warrior in his series. So, if he were scavenging around, hookshotting his way to pieces of the shards of the Elden Ring, he too would most likely beat the DLC's final boss even easier than the Tarnished.
With all that said, Link does indeed beat Elden Ring, but most likely falls short of the DLC's final boss, unless he stacks his Triforce powers with that of the Elden Ring itself, which would probably make him one of the most powerful forces in all of gaming. Regardless, thanks for watching, like, comment,
The year was 2013. The summer of July. No responsibilities, just time for a brand new zombies map in the peak of Black Ops 2.
Detour, Uplink, Rush, Ray Gun Mark II, oh my god, dude.
Golden era.
Yeet.
Releasing was the final Victus map of Black Ops 2, and with the incredibly difficult maps of Transit and Die Rise that released before it, you'd be right to expect the greatest challenge yet. But that couldn't be further from reality. Betrothed in features players would take years and years to fully uncover. It's ironic that Buried is set deep under the earth. As you and the Victus crew discovered, this town became overrun with zombies and an evil witch that sits in an old creepy house. The kind you'd never trick or treat at. Some people believe this town to be stuck in a time loop, while others at the time of Black Ops 2's release believe this to be the work of Raul Menendez, Black Ops 2's main antagonist. But I'll let you guys fight amongst yourselves in the comments.
Wait,
on that.
why?
At first glance, it can be hard to understand how a dark, close quarters map, abundant with tight alleyways, and redundant of large open spaces could be considered easy by traditional zombies map difficulty standards. But drop down the hole and you realize that Treyarch did something very different on this map, as if they carefully considered the things that contributed to a negative or difficult experience in zombies, and just did the opposite.
Buried was so much
You
fun.
were quickly introduced to the chalk wall-buy system that allows players to drop a weapon for an easy 1,000 points, or 2,000 points if strategically used during a double points power-up, contributing to higher points for quicker door, perk, and box buys. The next piece of the ease occurred when players found the jail cell keys. Now, who was in the cell? How about a giant man named Leroy? Not much was known about Leroy back then versus now, other than him probably being a reference to Lenny from the book of Mice and Men. But shockingly, Leroy isn't even his real name. His real name is Arthur. I guess the community really liked the name Leroy, so it just got stuck. Leroy, or Arthur, assists with just about anything you want him to, as long as you give him some candy or some booze, which is honestly a pretty good incentive I'd give into as well. The versatility of Leroy was vast, and there's bound to be features you've forgotten or never even knew 11 years on from release. Giving Leroy booze would force him to clear obstacles, opening the map without players needing to spend points. Or he'd even hold a crawler indefinitely for you, allowing you to complete the Easter egg steps or just go to the toilet. Leroy could also smash the box into place, moving with the dreaded teddy bear, and overall, he just helped to drastically ease so many of the traditional zombies pain points that bothered players on literally every other map to the point. Speaking of the box, it also featured 3 incredibly wonderful weapons that helped make Buried possibly the easiest map in zombies history, with 2 of them being exclusive to Buried itself. The Ray Gun Mark II was introduced in Buried and was everything the OG ray gun wished it was, offering great damage increases, accuracy, ammo, and most importantly, removing the splash damage that made the ray gun so dangerous in the previous maps. This would not remain exclusive to Buried, but it was a must-have for players on the map. However, it was Buried's 2 exclusive
Ray Gun Mark II was so good.
Effect on easing the map's difficulty. The Paralyzer was the crown jewel of this map, taking the form of everything Transit's jet gun wished it was. It didn't need to be crafted and built like the jet gun. It couldn't break like the jet gun. It could be pack-a-punch, unlike the jet gun, and it enabled movement tech that the jet gun could only dream of, which became especially useful in one area of Buried. With these 2 wonder weapons, it really seemed as if Treyarch considered the failures of previous wonder weapons and sought to fix them with revised models. The final wonder weapon was the most controversial one ever made, the Time Bomb. This damn wonder grenade was so broken because of its core functionality that allowed users to rewind the entire game back to the point in which they placed the time bomb. You could be on round 31 at the end of the fantastic Easter egg we will be getting into later into the video, and then your teammate could sneeze, slip, and hit the time bomb button to bring you back to round 1. If used as intended, the time bomb could be pretty useful at making the game easier, allowing teams to revert from sticky situations and game-ending downs. However, it was never used like this for most teams, and mostly just made for funny time bomb trolling online.
Yes, I got Ray Gun number 2!
Yeah, boy.
Oh man, I was about to get it again.
Who used the frickin'? Oh my god.
You shouldn't have said that. He used his time bomb so we could go back in time. When someone got a ray gun. You.
This rightfully never made a return in any Zombies map, but it wasn't for any of the reasons above. Its removal from future entries to the Zombies franchise was because of its contribution to the most fundamentally broken and
hell yeah, the bank glitch.
Map, the bank. The bank had made previous appearances in the previous 2 Victus maps, but its most prolific impact was on Buried, and players could use time bombs to glitch the bank and deposit hundreds of thousands of points with relative ease. Gamer Subs Christmas sale. Have you been naughty and nice? Use code EVAN at checkout. Every single tub gets you a prize. While the map was easy for every reason discussed, the map also had a lot of small Easter egg rewards that made it even easier. My favorites always included the woman in black in the house. This was actually the inventor of the iconic Pack-a-Punch, Jebediah Brown's mother. She was, in his moment of weakness, dug up from her grave and put into Pack-a-Punch itself, turning her into this ghost lady. She was unlocked in our game by Leroy bulldozing into her fence, and was really spooky to younger Evan, as once you entered her house and ran through it, she would attack at full speed. But once you got past her and her point grabbing, she would actually reward you with a free perk. Another free perk could be obtained with the ballistic knife in the bar. By shooting it at the dartboard, she would begin to play a tune, and if you went to the basement of her house, she would be seen playing the same tune on the piano, and you could give her a tip for a free perk. That's not to say you were completely invincible on this map though. Between the holes in the tight, narrow caves making you near death on a fall, the narrow pathing in the map's design not really allowing for trains, and the confusing layout of the hedge maze, which changed every time you entered it. But these small flickers of difficulty were quickly mitigated when you realized that the paralyzer allowed you to fly over the doors of the hedge maze, and training wasn't necessary when everyone just sat in the most OP camping spot of all
For
time,
real.
next to Juggernog. For those who really still
Juggernog, you get the spring trap Juggernog right there, and then whatchamacallit. There was another thing. There was also like a blade trap that you can add there. Every time the damn springboard was resetting, you could have the thing go off. Then you just have a little mannequin power them up. Oh, it's so cool.
And the one keyboard warrior who will comment that it's harder than Die Rise. You could literally have a Pack-a-Punch Raygun Mark II, Pack-a-Punch Paralyzer, another Pack-a-Punch weapon of your choice, 7 perks, and 3 buildables built all before round 1 had even finished. And if that doesn't make it the easiest map of all time, I don't know what will. However, there is something that is difficult on this map. As a send-off to Treyarch in his last map as director of Zombies, Jimmy Zielinski put a lot of effort into stepping up the buried Easter egg. To me, this map is often cited as easy and fun, but only one of those remains true for its Easter egg. And as the Zombies community would come to find out, the Easter egg main quest is also often cited as the toughest of the Zielinski era. By this point in Zombies, we've seen Easter eggs that span days, others that were solved in mere hours, and unfortunately some that came with some cheating controversy. This one was no different in the controversial department, but thankfully the community was quick not to regard the cheating team from taking glory. Play the Game Central was the subject of controversy in Mob of the Dead for having leaked information and steps of the Easter egg at his disposal before the map had even been released. They were posting the world's first completion while everyone else was early into the map and refused to post the steps / a guide right away. Ben from PTG even made it a point to only share information with YouTubers who treated him kindly. With that being said, PTG was first to Buried, but as Mr. Waffles explained when I asked him about it,
PTG had a reputation at this point, right? That meant that people were skeptical of them at the best of times, and so for them to come out and just have endings of Easter eggs didn't seem particularly believable to anybody, and especially if you're just going to post the very end, but you're not going to post the build-up, right? You're not going to stream you solving it. You're not going to discover it in step with the community. If you're just completely detached and far ahead from everyone else, then that's sus, right? And even to this very day, in the Easter egg hunts, the difference between the first team and the second team getting it is minutes usually, and occasionally we get into the sort of hours territory between Team 1 and Team 2, but that's pretty rare, right? Because everyone more or less moves through these steps in kind of unison. But that's not what happened here, and it was pretty clear to everybody that they hadn't arrived at their solution legitimately. So it kind of got written off by the whole community.
PTG was posting the endings of both sides of this Easter egg, but no steps. There's even a joke nodding to this fact in the world's first of the Maxis side, which we will touch on.
Woo! We're the first people to do it on YouTube that doesn't play the game. Woo! Take that NGT.
No, I have 3 guns.
The story goes that right when the map came out, the Easter egg hunt was on. Easter eggs in Black Ops 2 weren't servicing the fan base in sheer puzzles and spectacle the way that Moon had. And although Mob of the Dead gave us a true game over screen and a way to beat the map, the fan base still wanted to see how our Victus crew's story would finish. In comes legends bringing their communities together, like Mr. Raffle Waffles, Mr. Dalek JD, NGT Zombies, MC Sports Hawk, Codename Pizza, Liam Winter, Noah J, and more. As you know, Victus had both Richtofen and Maxis Easter egg steps. The main canon ending is technically Maxis, but Richtofen's diverts enough that both are worth discussing. The hunt began with an iconic intro. On July 2nd of 2013, Spiderbite discusses all the intel of Maxis and Richtofen's discussions.
Attention, my corporeal friends. You can hear me, yes? Our journey inches ever closer to its conclusion.
Essentially, the Easter egg is thrown at you right off the bat in Buried. Now, Richtofen's side and Max's side were a lot easier to follow this time, since they both start with 2 diverging paths, unlike Die Rise and Transit, which had the player in the same locations. The Gallows and the Guillotine were the 2 different locations. The first thing a Zombies Easter egg veteran would need for this one was fairly obvious: the wonder weapon, the Paralyzer. But what for? Well, either shoot this enough to make these orbs glow, or use the Resonator trap and they would break. The next step was found by Yay It Drops, who discovered that there was a lamp floating around the town with which throwing a grenade caused it to drop and you could interact with it. In true Ghost Hunter fashion, filling up this lamp with souls was required, but the means were different. Yay It Drops posted that Richtofen's side called for witches to be killed in order to fill up the lamp, while NGT Zombies posted that Max's side needed Leroy to kill zombies while Sugar rushed out. And this hilarious clip from back then just basically sums it up. Have a listen.
Okay, so this is what we did. Now he takes off, and I think it has to do with the zombies, like the stink zombies. When the zombies stink and he gets in front of it, he's like, ew, that stinks. I'm going away now. So what we did, we ended up getting a few kills and he just ran away. And then we decided, okay, well, next round we're gonna round up a bunch of zombies, and then we're gonna get them to kill a bunch. And you do hear the indications that the lantern is being filled. Maxis does give you some audio cues, and then here's what happens when what I believe is we filled the entire lantern, and Maxis comes on, and this is what he says. No!
Now, you might be thinking, well, this Easter egg so far is just as easy as the map itself. And while I agree with you, I think the next step is where the community should have been stumped for a while. See, after filling the lantern, this message or code appeared right outside the saloon. It's essentially a tic-tac-toe cipher, where by breaking it into 3 letters at a time, you can decrypt your answer. You just need to visualize it like these great guides from back then.
This will reveal a piece of ciphertext on the wall. Now, I'm not going to get you to decrypt it yourselves or anything like that. I'm literally going to give you the 5 options of things that it could be and what they translate to within the game.
So after watching those videos and seeing how difficult it could be, do you think the community solved it, or do you think they brute forced it? The community decided that punching appropriate signs in the tunnels caused a wisp to spawn in. Now, how did they decide to do this? Galvanuckles were making a sound when they punched the signs in the tunnels. Guiding the wisp was not an easy task either, and really stepped up the challenge of a low difficulty map. You needed the new perk Vulture Aid to even find the damn thing, since it let you see through walls. And this step was different depending on which scientist you chose to work with. Now, Max's side was guiding the wisp through a bunch of zombies to keep the current charged, and this was a major pain for anyone who couldn't run trains around the map. You really just needed a lot of zombies. MC Sports Hawk was the first to upload about this step on July 3rd of 2013, just passing by Spiderbite from NGT Zombies. Richtofen's side of this was completed first by Yay It Drops, and this one worked by having to corner the wisp. This meant positioning your team throughout the map to run into it when it spawned in, and the timer was very quick. It was a good thing Leroy could hold a crawler for you, or this would have taken a long time for teams. Once the Wisp was either trapped at the guillotine or charged at the gallows, teams were on the hunt. If a puzzle code was brute forced and solved rather quickly, then this was no problem, right? While Richtofen side needed the time bomb and some soul collection. With the time bomb specifically, this was one of the hardest, if not the coolest steps zombies had ever seen. This is also where information on who was first was getting hard to track. So the step was discovered to go like this. A time bomb placed on the guillotine takes you to a paradox, an infinity round, where zombies don't die. In fact, the players needed monkey bombs so they didn't die almost instantly. The goal here was to find 4 bodies of the players themselves out of 13 potential spots where you were looking for a single switch for the guillotine. This was easily the hardest step to do out of the entire Easter egg, both sides included, since you had very little retries, and it was very easy to die from zombies that didn't die and seemingly kept spawning. Even finding a body didn't mean you found the switch, and if you went down with the switch, it would fall off of the player, causing so much confusion if somebody went down in that time. There is also added frustration that the Easter egg would sometimes soft lock, as the switch would just fall through the map instead of falling on the ground. You could tell the team at Treyarch really wanted the masters of the Easter egg community to do this. After this step, and we're going to stick with Richtofen for this, the next one was going to the maze and flipping the levers in the correct order, since it changed per game. In fact, some of the maze even changed every time you walked in. And the final step was one of contention for a world's first completion. This step was called Sharpshooter, and it was some Old West target practice. Interacting with the wish fountain outside of the candy shop brought targets around the town. The community basically agreed that the chalk by PDW was your best friend for this one, and the goal was to not miss a single target from all 4 players. But I always remember that one friend that would just say, yeah, I'm done, and then you'd have to reset anyway. Clearing all of these would reward teams with the achievement Mind Games. You would also get all perma perks and this dialogue.
Finally, I am in control. The ether is mine to manipulate as I wish. The moon is now my own personal plaything.
But with this achievement unlocked, that didn't mean there wasn't a true ending. But before we do that, we should talk about the canon ending for Ludwig Maxis. Maxis didn't have players going back in time, but instead a whole nother puzzle itself. This was called the Bell Puzzle, and to say that it's a trial and error puzzle is an understatement. Essentially, players are put in different positions around the map and they have to ring bells corresponding to one player reading a light board in the mansion. This step was frustrating, mostly due to players in these rooms and coordinating the lights of the bells in each one. Now, I won't lie, this one is easier than Richtofen's step, but this one was more dependent on communication, so it was definitely difficult in a different kind of way, making both scientists actually have some intrigue to do their Easter eggs. Once the players rang these bells with the help of Mr. Dalek JD's guide on the topic, the sharpshooter step was up again, the one that he called very annoying in his video. This video also has an extremely 2013 ad for zombies. Just please have a listen.
And this app is called the Ultimate Utility app for Black Ops 2, and this app will be so helpful, and it's really helped me out in terms of after I've played zombies and I want to jump into multiplayer but I'm not too sure what guns to go for, what perks, especially when there's new maps. I'm not too sure about the layouts and where like domination flags are or the best parts of maps are. Then this is a fantastic app.
This step, just like Richtofen's infinite round step, was a big difficulty jump for Easter eggs. Buried had trained its players to become akin to ease throughout its tiny layout, but having trial and error puzzles for each scientist showed that this Easter egg brought out more team coordination and difficulty than anything the Victus crew had seen previously. So now that both scientists' Easter eggs were out of the way, players began to wonder what the hell this box with all the lights in the courthouse was all about. Well, as each map had progressed, we have discussed a nav card and a nav table. This was built on each Victus map, including Buried. With each nav card inserted and each scientist Easter egg completed, players were making progress to the true ending. I spoke to Mr. Rafflewaffles as he was the world's first legit completion on Buried's Easter egg with Richtofen, alongside his teammates of Liam Winter, Nick That Gaming Show not using leaked intel, Zombie Frenzy, and Saggy Berries, with Liam helping from the outside while the team was subbing in. On the world's first, Milo had this to say.
Buried was wild because I actually started the map late, personally, so I was at college when it came out, And so I was seeing the first couple of steps starting to be solved while I was still at college. Then I rushed home. I was like, I can't wait any longer. I've just got to get home here. Rushed home, jumped in with my team, and started doing things like, for example, we solved the cipher that you used during the Easter egg, and I have a video about that, which feels very dated at this point. We got in this really awkward position where we felt like we'd gotten as far as we could in my team of me, Zombie Frenzy, Star Wars Bob, and Nick That Gaming Show. We were all together and we were pushing forwards, but we were stuck. And then Liam hopped onto Skype and he messaged us and said, hey guys, I know what the next step is. Like, I'm pretty confident I know how you do it. And the problem was that Liam wasn't in the game. And so we basically had to, as a group, decide that Jose, Zombie Frenzy, was gonna drop out of the match, and then we would start a new match and invite Liam and get to that step and then do it, which was very controversial because that meant that Jose was technically not first in the world in the team, except that he'd been in the team up until that point. So as far as I'm concerned, we just had a 5-man first in the world for the first time ever. And I really distinctly remember as well, when we got it done and we got it finished, it was so late that I had college again, like an hour later or something. And so I remember saying to Liam, it is absolutely integral you get your guide up ASAP. Normally it would be me, right, making my no-nonsense guide. But I was like, Liam, here's my footage, here's everything you need. Please make your guide the first one out here because we've been first and it would suck if we then had to wait because we then got beaten to being first guide because I was at college. Like, that would be really unfortunate. And he did it and he smashed it, and I then made my guide, like, I don't know, that evening or something when I got home from college. And that's the story of Buried.
Richtofen had been moved to a talking zombie. Play That Game was not given props for World's First, and the hunt continued despite them, with the community rallying against the cheating
Mr.
way.
Ruffle Waffles,
and now
dude.
Samantha was back in control for our final map. And yes, that's right, Origins.
God, Origins so good. Suck on my ass now, Chiefs. All right, fellas. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.